Hi everyone, my name is Chloe. I wasn't good at studying when I was in high school. My parents promised me to take me to Jamaica for a vacation if I became an excellent student. I started studying hard to succeed on every subject, except algebra. My algebra teacher, Mrs. Merrill Davis, wanted to help me, but nothing worked. When I got just another D for a test, I burst out crying. She felt sorry for me and agreed to teach me for free, but I had to visit her at her place. While she was busy doing the housework, she also taught me. I followed her everywhere and wrote down everything she said. Sometimes I helped her to wash the dishes. As I had very poor knowledge of algebra, we had to learn the materials for the previous years. It took a lot of time, and I was a regular visitor at her house. Her son came to visit her from time to time, too. He was weird in some way. I think he suffered from schizophrenia or other disease. Once, when Meryl and I were in a supermarket, and I was answering Meryl's questions on algebra, we met my parents. They were happy that I had made so much progress. One day, Meryl got sick and was hospitalized. I stayed at her house with her son because she begged me to do that. I cooked dinner for him and then helped him to go to bed. During the night, Nathan came to the room where I was sleeping and asked if he could sleep in the same room with me. He was afraid of darkness. I agreed. I told him stories to help him fall asleep. In the morning, Meryl asked me to buy some medicine for Nathan. I met my parents in the drugstore and they took me home. Nathan remained alone. Meryl called me that night and said that Nathan had a schizophrenic attack and he was taken to the psychiatric hospital. She also mentioned that my visits helped him feel better. Meryl and I visited Nathan at the hospital, and he was glad to see us. When he was discharged, we often spent time together studying algebra, doing housework. Nathan also helped around the house, which made Meryl very happy. Once we went to the supermarket together. I gave him a shopping list, and he bought everything in strict accordance with the list. Meryl was delighted to hear about that. One day, my parents met me at the supermarket and took me home. They said we were leaving for Jamaica. I reminded them that I still had bad marks for algebra. However, they laughed at me and said that they had planned to take me to Jamaica anyway. I sent a message about Jamaica to Meryl and went to the airport with my parents. I left my mobile phone at home. The beach, surf, sand, palm trees, and sun were absolutely perfect. Cocktails and fruit were delivered right out to deck chairs. I met a handsome guy, Andrew, and we had romantic relations. We went to the cinema, nightclubs. The most amazing week in my life passed quickly. Upon arrival home, I found over 100 missed calls and messages from Meryl. Something bad had happened. When Nathan knew about my Jamaica vacation, he had an attack and was hospitalized again. Doctors had to use some strong tranquilizers to calm him down. After seeing Nathan at the hospital, I cried the whole night. He lay on the bed and didn't recognize anyone. He only whispered my name. Doctor said we had to talk to him, so I read him fairy tales about elves, a beautiful princess, and a noble prince, and their happy marriage. A few days later, Nathan finally recognized me and was really happy to see me. We all had hope that he could recover. He called me a princess that day. Soon, Nathan was discharged. He returned home, helped his mother around the house and cleaned the yard, watered flowers in huge pots, but still there was something that troubled him. He often left us to go to his room and spent a lot of time with his smartphone. In a couple of days, we had to celebrate my birthday. Meryl cooked a lot of delicacies, but everything looked somehow romantic. Subdued lighting, candles, classical music. Finally, we all sat at the table. Nathan's tension was running too high. He wiped sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief again, and every 5 minutes he looked into his smartphone. Meryl also looked different, mysterious. Suddenly, I heard music, and with Nathan's gesture, a small elf entered the room with a little box in his hands. He handed the box to me. I was surprised and wondered what birthday gift they had prepared for me. Earphones? iPod? They knew I loved classical music. I opened the box to find another little box inside. I opened the little box and found a ring. What? That was an unexpected gift because they knew I didn't like jewelry very much, but I liked the ring, so I put it on. Nathan and Meryl looked at each other, and I saw smiles on their faces. Nathan came up to me and embraced me. He said he knew I would agree to be his wife. I was surprised. His wife? I was beginning to realize what had just happened. Nathan proposed to me. I put on his ring, and everyone thought I had said yes. I had a storm of emotions, thoughts, and feelings in my soul. I I had never thought about Nathan as my husband, especially taking into account his disease, and what kind of future could we have together? Meryl had tears of happiness in her eyes. I recalled her telling me that she had cancer and that she was worried about Nathan, who would be alone in this world after her death. This is the story that has happened to me. Actually, this story has probably just begun, and I have no idea how it is going to end. I really don't know what to do. Remember my story? I think everything has just started, and I don't really know what to do now. You might ask me why I was so shocked and didn't know what to do. I think you remember that I had a perfect boyfriend named Andrew. We kept in touch and dreamt of being together one day. But rejecting Nathan's proposal was not an option, because such news could have really tragic consequences for him. I don't even want to think of what could happen if I wouldn't marry Nathan. I had to be careful. I decided to visit my parents and stay with them for a while. I told Meryl, "Love is great, but we need to tell Nathan the truth. We should discuss the situation. You, as Nathan's mother, should help me to explain everything to him." She replied, "Dear Chloe, love is such a delicate feeling that words are not always necessary. I can see how good your relationship is." And she hugged me with tears in her eyes. "I am so happy for you both." I went home and felt upset. Nathan followed me like a puppy. My parents asked me, "How are you? What's the news?" And I answered, "Mom, Dad, I'm getting married, and this is my future husband. He has proposed to me, and I said yes." It was purely formal. You can imagine what happened after that. My dad took a deep breath to shout at me, but couldn't say anything. Mom started crying and freaking out. Nathan gave a handkerchief to my mother and said he would take good care of me during all his free time left after taking care of our children. Mrs. Merrill also arrived. We all gathered in the living room to discuss what had happened. Nathan was talking to our tropic fish in the fishbowl. Many arguments were presented, and a lot of things were said. My parents demanded from me to stop visiting Mrs. Davis and Nathan. Mrs. Davis begged us to understand the situation. If Nathan understood that I had never planned to marry him, he would get into the hospital again, and probably never get out of it, or even die of heartbreak. At this moment, Nathan came up to my mother and asked her, "Will you love and visit your grandchildren? I hope you will, because my mother is going to meet the Lord soon, and she will not be able to take care of them." We were shocked. Mrs. Davis was crying in silence. When Nathan returned to the fish, my father said I had to marry Nathan. We looked at him with surprise. He added that it would be a fake marriage, but Nathan had to be unaware of that fact. We all had to be very good actors and pretend everything was true until Nathan felt better or forgot about this idea. This seemed to be the best solution, and I agreed to it, though I had my doubts. The next week, Nathan and I were busy shopping for toys, cute bottles with little chickens, funny hats and bibs for our future babies. The view of these tiny items made me feel a little better. In the evening when we got home, we put all the things we had bought on the bed and looked at them with admiration. Nathan was incredibly happy. We spent many nights in the same room. I read fairy tales to him. He enjoyed falling asleep to the sound of my voice. He put his hands under his cheek as if he were a child. He actually was a child. That day, I read Magic Castle to him. He fell asleep very fast. Soon after that, my boyfriend Andrew called. He said he was going from the airport and wanted me to meet him. I covered Nathan with a blanket and went out to see Andrew. We met at the park located close to Meryl's house. We were happy to see each other. We were cuddling and enjoying each other's company. We hadn't seen each other for over a month. We were whispering words of love to each other, kissing and talking. Andrew promised to move to my city and marry me. Suddenly, I saw Nathan. He approached to us very quickly and then pushed Andrew. Andrew was surprised. Nathan took my hand and started to pull me away. Andrew thought Nathan was crazy, so he took my other hand and began pulling me too. They were both trying to pull me, moving in quite the opposite directions. I was shouting, then Andrew stopped and punched Nathan on the face. Nathan fell down, looked at us with frightened eyes, and ran away. It took me about 5 minutes to explain the whole situation to Andrew. He seemed to understand, and we started looking for Nathan. He wasn't at home. Mrs. Davis was sleeping peacefully in her bed. We searched the park, but Nathan wasn't there either. Then, we searched the entire neighborhood, but couldn't find Nathan. 2 hours later, I woke Mrs. Davis and we went to the police. In a couple of minutes, they found out that Nathan got hit with a car and he was in the intensive care of the nearby hospital. We rushed there. Fortunately, Nathan wasn't seriously injured, except a head trauma. We prayed to God till the morning, hoping Nathan would be all right. I introduced Andrew to Meryl as my cousin. Mrs. Davis was sitting and looking at the same spot, whispering some words so quietly that we couldn't hear anything. Andrew was worried about Nathan. He decided it would be right for me to marry Nathan because it was my fault that such a nice guy had fallen in love with me. At that moment, I thought he was right. Nathan was a good man, and I wanted him to be happy. I wanted him to love and be loved, and if it were me who could help him, so why not? Early in the morning, Nathan's doctor came out to us and said Nathan woke up and wanted to see his mother. Mrs. Davis thanked the Lord, and we all entered the ward. Nathan was glad to see his mother and looked good. I embraced him and started covering his face with kisses. I was really happy he was alive. But Nathan moved me aside and asked Mrs. Davis who I was. We were all amazed. Then Meryl said I was Nathan's distant relative. I waved my hand at him. Nathan asked his mother when his baseball contest was going to be. Mrs. Davis smiled and said that the contest had taken place while he was in the hospital 4 years ago. We met Mrs. Davis a few days later, and she told us that Nathan was fine. She also mentioned that 4 years ago, he had been hit by a car, and he had retrograde amnesia and often forgot things that had happened to him. Now, everything was all right, but he couldn't remember the period when we met. I was happy to learn that he was good, that he didn't remember me, and that I didn't have to marry him. I could be with Andrew now. However, I always feel good when I recall the happy days when Nathan was my friend. To tell you the truth, I recall those moments quite often. That's my story. If you have enjoyed it, please click the like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to our channel.